Yo, what's up, good peoples? And welcome to another episode of 88 Fantasy Wrestling. I'm your host, Sean P. And today, guys, we got a very, very special episode. So, today's episode is pretty much what the basis of the show was built around. You know, it's like the bread and butter of 88 Fantasy Wrestling, man. Today, we're going to be talking about Hulk Hogan versus Bret Hart, man. It's the 1993 I'll say the fantasy matchup of the decade, however you want to put it, but it was the biggest match that never happened, you know. So we're gonna take a look at that, man, for those who know the story, those who may not, you know. Like I say, just do a deep dive into that. So before we get into that, of course, man, we got to talk about our past episodes. Of course, I appreciate everybody always chiming in, tuning in to us, checking us out. We just completed our 88 fantasy tournament recently. I know, like I say, we had a new 88 fantasy champion, of course, British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith. So those who ain't seen it, go check that out. And just all our previous episodes in the archives, man. We got more to come as well, of course. So definitely just keep subscribing and keep showing us love, man. We appreciate you guys all the time so much. So without further ado, man, let's get into this episode, guys. So today's episode, like I say, man, I like to call this one Big Egos, man, because that's really what it was all about, man. It's just an ego trip, you know, from this guy here, man, from the Hitman. You know, there's no right guy in the situation. So, like I say, we're going to get into this Big Ego episode. So, say, in the history of WWE, man, there's been no other match, you say a dream match, that had more controversy and more of a generational shift. I think that's another way to put this. It was a generational shift, man, because you was leaving from them golden era days of the 80s, going into the 90s, you know. And so I feel like this was a good example of the passing the torch, you know. And of course, like I say, this is the potential matchup between the Hulkster, Hulk Hogan, and Bret the Hitman Hart, man. It's going to take place at SummerSlam 1993. That was the plan going in. So like I said, let's take back a look at the circumstances surrounding one of the most talked about fantasy matchups of all time, man. So this story, guys, if you actually want to like go back to where to start, I pinpointed this story to start at the Royal Rumble 1992. All right. So those who know, Hogan, he was basically like starting to get booed at this point, man. Hulkamania was running wild for like the past 5 years leading up to this, you know, leading up to January 92. Hogan was just getting stale. You know, that's the only way I could put it, man. He was getting stale, so he was starting to get booed, man. And like I say, the company was looking to go into another direction. You know, there's no other way to put it, man. You know, it was just a shift in time. You know, and I felt like all the fans, they were getting tired of the Hulkster, man. So Vince had to really put his sneaker cap on, and he wanted to go into another direction. You know, and he needed a new champion. You know, bottom line, he needed a new champion, man. I believe going into the summertime, Randy Savage was the champ, but you know, Randy Savage was getting up there. Him and Vince's relationship wasn't as best as you probably would have wanted it to be. So he had a couple doubts. So he had his options on who was going to be the new champion going into basically 1993 and beyond. You know, so his number one choice, don't get me wrong, his number one choice, no matter what anybody say, was the Ultimate Warrior. All right, Ultimate Warrior was his number one choice, man. So basically, he wanted to be the new champ. They actually wanted Warrior to turn heel. So for those who don't know, this is a good 88 little factual story right here. So Warrior was presented the chance to turn heel at SummerSlam 92. If you remember, him and Savage, they had a WWE title match going into that event. And it was always a big thing about like who sold out. Was it Warrior? Was it Savage? You know, they had Flair and Perfect in the middle of it. So the end result really was going to be for Warrior to turn against Savage, get the title, and basically just be a bad guy. He's gonna be a bad champion, you know what I'm saying, going into that. And they was gonna have him do basically what they wanted Hogan to do and give the title to the next guy. But he wanted Warrior to be his guy for sure. But unfortunately, Warrior, he ended up nixing the idea because he wanted to get all his, you know, his promotional sales, you know, his marketing sales. You know, he couldn't sell no t-shirts if you a bad guy. People ain't gonna love you the way they, you know, the kids love the Ultimate Warrior. So he figured it messed his money up, so that didn't happen, man. So unfortunately, they had to move on from the Warrior, man. So the second choice, man, now this is a lovely, I would say an 88 sneak fact, man. Tito Santana. So those who don't know, man, Tito Santana was actually in the running for Vince choices to be the next WWE champion, man. Now, those who don't know, Tito Santana, man, hell of an athlete, man. I feel like Tito was, and the reason why he probably was getting picked because he was just holding it down so much, man. I would say from 88, 89, when he left the Strike Force, the tag teams he was in. Even before that, he was he was the Intercontinental Champion, you know. So they already knew about his work ethic, even from back in the 80s. So he definitely was on Vince's top list, basically being the next WWE, world champion. And I feel like his international appeal was another thing that would have, had them get that crossover. Would have gave him that crossover effect. I feel like that was another reason he was looking at Tito to be the WWE champion. Just being from the Mexican heritage, he could have crossed over to all that society. So definitely, man. Tito, he was in the running. Unfortunately, they didn't go with Tito. And the guy they ended up going with, man, was Bret Hart, man. So Bret the Hitman Hart, man, is another international wrestler, of course, from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And his basically his background and his story was he always had great matches. That was the thing about Bret. Like, Bret let the matches do the talking for him, So it was basically that time where you had the big man running wild from the Hogans and the Warriors and Andres and them guys, and they was showing off the muscles and the stature, but you had these mid-card level guys, the Tito Santanas of the world, the Bret Harts of the world, the Macho Mans of the world, that was basically giving them the great matches that they wanted, giving the fans the matches that they wanted. So that's why these guys were considered in the running. And also Bret, he passed the test, as far as the love test, I would say. He was the guy that the girls wanted to be with and the guys wanted to be. That's how you always look at your champion to be. The girls want to be with him, the guys want to be like him, you got a champ. Man, Bret passed all those tests, man. So Bret Hart, he was the decision, man. So he was the guy that they went. So with the new champion in tow, man, the next thing they had to do was get opponents, right? So they had basically the Rumble and Mania was set, because Yokozuna was already set to be in line for all of that, right? So all of that was already good. The next pay-per-view, basically going into the summer with King of the Ring and SummerSlam, they had to get something set for Bret to, if you had questions about him before, this is going to put you over with the guy. You got to make sure that you believed in your champion, right? And so they had a list of basically who would be Bret's opponent going into that. And the number one guy on Vince's list going into being Bret's opponent for the summer was Hulk Hogan, man. So Hulk Hogan, he had left after WrestleMania 8, in 1992, he left the company. You remember they got hit with the big steroid scandal as well. Now, this was like before all of this even took shape, but Hogan came back to the company in February of 93. This is like basically in the middle of Bret and Yoko's heavyweight storyline going into WrestleMania 9. Hogan ended up coming back then, right? So, Vince made the call back, brought Hogan back. Now, when he came back for WrestleMania 9, he came back in the tag team. And those that remember, he came back, him and Brutus Beefcake, they were part of a tag team going into Mania to battle Money Inc. for the World Tag Team title. So Hogan was totally away from the heavyweight title scene, period. He was going in to be a tag match at WrestleMania. But like lo and behold, basically, so let's go back to WrestleMania 9, pretty much, okay? So Yokozuna ended up challenging Bret Hart for the WWE title. He ended up winning the title from Bret at Mania, right? So this was the pivot came, all right? So the pivot came, so when Hogan basically interjected himself, this is where the story goes. He interjected himself into the heavyweight title match, basically saying, hey, I think this would be a good idea. You should have me go out there, avenge Bret for losing the title to Yoko, and then I'm going to take the title off of Yoko. So they had basically, that was the agreement. Like, Hogan's about to go in there, and that's what happened. That's what those who seen it, Hogan went in. Once Yoko beat Bret at WrestleMania 9, Fuji got in there, challenged Hogan immediately to a match. Hogan accepted it. 20 seconds later, Hogan's the new WWE champion. So that's the way it happened, right? So the thing about it is like, okay, so this is where it get tricky, of course. It always get tricky somewhere. So they said Vince's plan basically was to have Hogan, he was going to defend the title against Bret at SummerSlam. Now that he was the champion, he's going to defend the title against Bret at SummerSlam, right? Giving the belt back to Bret, so basically passing the torch. Passing the torch, taking the company into the future. You know, that was the whole plan. This is the problem, man. Hulk Hogan had creative control with all of his match outcomes. Meaning, like, if he didn't like the way he was going to end this match, he wasn't with that. You know, it wasn't going to work for him, bro. That's the way he worked. It wasn't going to work for him. If he didn't like the way that match ended, he had basically something written in his contract where he could change the finish of that match to his liking. So that's where the problem was coming in at, okay? So basically, when they approached him with the SummerSlam match with Britt, he was saying at first, like, okay, cool, but then basically ended up getting dropped. You know, he was like, let me think about it, you know, and that's when things started to get a little shaky. So this brings us to the infamous photo shoot. So those that don't know, it was a photo shoot that went down, right? I would say probably in June of 1993, we would say, right? So look, WWE, they actually went so far as to promote this match by having both men brought in to shoot a scene for WWF magazine where they had a tug of war with the WWE title. You know, so this was a real thing, man. They actually had like a tug of war with the belt and basically showing like they was fighting. So it's being printed in all of these magazines to promote the match for SummerSlam. There was all type of like promos leading up saying like, this is your match. This is, you know, who you think will win. So he was giving the fans that appetizer, getting them ready for the match, you know. And Britt was all like grinning ear to ear because he knew he was finally about to get his moment in time where he was gonna make Hogan tap out to the sharpshooter and get the title back. Justification to the 100th degree, you know. But at the 49th hour, basically, Hogan, he nixed the idea. You know, he said like, nah. He actually went so far, if y'all remember, he went so far as to call Britt a midget wrestler. He was like, ain't no, I'm not losing to no midget wrestlers. That's what he called smaller wrestlers at the time, you know. And he just said like, Britt wasn't in his league. That was pretty much bottom line. You're not in my league, bro. So I'm not dropping the title to you. And then once this got back to Britt, of course, it was just over, man. He lost it. And, you know, it created a lot of tense moments. I remember he ended up approaching Hogan about it backstage. There's stories about all of this. He approached Hogan backstage, like, oh, so, you know, I'm not good enough for you. You can't drop the belt. You know, I respect you, all this. So they had a big falling out, you know. And it was basically pretty much Hogan's world. You know, he had it. But in defense, though, I do got to give y'all this. In defense, you got to think about where Hogan was coming from. Hogan was basically saying, he was like, look, I'm not about to be put in these face versus face predicaments where you're going to have the fans turn against me. You know, I got to think about my future as well. So I'm defending my guy, man, because he was like, you're not going to, like it happened in WrestleMania 6. Y'all remember it happened in WrestleMania 6 when he got put with Ultimate Warrior and he was having the fans had to choose a side. So you're pretty much doing the same thing to him again. And that's probably why he interjected. He like, look, I know y'all going to choose Britt. This dude's the newer face, the fresher face. You know, y'all already was booing me from Jump Street. So why would I sign on for this? You know, and I'm about to lose. So no, I'm good. I'm good. You know, so looking at it from Hogan's perspective, I definitely could see where my man was coming from. But unfortunately, you know, we just got robbed. So this is what we end up doing. Hogan, he ended up going into King of the Ring. He ended up dropping the belt to Yoko, right? And basically Yoko, he you know, he went on and he was the champion like for a price probably longer than Vince wanted him to be. He ended up dropping the belt to Britt back at WrestleMania 10, almost a year later, you know. So with Hogan not complying with that, it was pretty much, it changed a lot of the rest of the year. You know, it changed a lot of build-up. Britt ended up going on to face Jerry Lawler at SummerSlam that year. You know, so basically they was fighting over, because Britt had one King of the Ring, so they was fighting over the true king gimmick, you would say. And Hogan, he, like I say, after he dropped the belt back to Yoko, man, he wouldn't even appear with WWE, man, all the way to 2002. That was the next time we seen Hogan. From 1993, he was gone. Of course, he went to WCW, did his Hollywood thing, but we wouldn't see him like that until 2002, man. And just like that, the greatest potential match was over, man. It was off. So, again, I can see where Hogan was coming from, you know, but Britt, of course, he would go on to still be the man, and everybody was basically left wondering. We'd always be wondering, like, what if that would have happened? Me, myself, I'm definitely selfish because the SummerSlam was here at Pontiac. I'm sorry, at Auburn Hills. So we was robbed ourselves. We could have definitely got to see that. We was in attendance. I was in attendance that day. Sean P was there, and being able to see the Britt versus Hogan match, oh man, that would have been so golden, man. So definitely, man, probably the biggest what if in professional wrestling history, and we had to talk about it again. So just so you know, man, Britt and Hogan, they would go on to fight. They would go on to have matches later on. They did end up battling. It's like a couple Monday Nitro matches that they had. This is like back in 98, 99. Once everybody, they was all in WCW at this time. But when they was in their primes, we never got it, and I feel like that was it would have been so groundbreaking. Just to see that type of we never got to see like Bruno and Hogan, or do you say Hogan and Austin, so or something to that degree where you actually seen the torch get passed. And this is another instance where we never got to see the torch get passed, unfortunately. So, I would say the biggest what if, and it was all due, no winners in this one, because of course we had big egos, man. It was just an ego trip. That's it. So big ego trip, man. The proudest, but still just legendary guys, man. We definitely love them guys for all the contributions they did to professional wrestling, to WWE in particular. And we just got to keep moving on, and that's what drives our show. So if it went for these stories, we wouldn't have a story to tell here on 88. So that's it. That's what we got right there. Oh, I got to give you guys some recommendations, man. I got to give you some match recommendations for these. So the first match I recommend for you guys is the Britt versus Yoko match from WrestleMania 9. Check that out because it's so much of a factor into the story, so you got to check that out. Quick match. It's only like maybe about 8 minutes long, 9 minutes long, but check that one out. Check out Hogan versus Yoko at the King of the Ring 93. Another, like I say, is just so important to the story. So check out the way that they end up getting the belt back on the Yoko. Check that out. Britt versus Mr. Perfect from King of the Ring 93. Now I threw this in just because this is a great match. So go check that out. You ever want to see something? If you need a great match to watch for this week, check out that one, man. Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect, King of the Ring 1993, man, from Ohio. Check that out. And then we got Britt versus Hogan. Again, this is the September 98 Monday Nitro match. So y'all go check that out. You can pull it up on Netflix, YouTube, whatever. But check out the actual match that they had and just check out their chemistry or whatnot and see what could have been, if we would have had that match in the Twilights. So pretty much that's all I got. Appreciate you guys always chiming. We got to talk about the upcoming episodes that we got coming up. Still got, of course, I keep saying that we got a tag team episode that's coming up. I got an ECW episode that's coming up. I got a Goldberg episode that we cooking up. So plenty in store, you guys. I appreciate everybody always just chiming in to us, checking us out. We're gonna keep going for sure. And that's about it, man. Like I say, I appreciate you guys. So you guys don't have nothing else. I don't have nothing either. Hopefully our egos don't grow as big as them two guys. And that's about it. So again, 88 Fantasy Wrestling, Britt versus Hulk. That's it. I'm out. Peace.
Let's dream about it.